Hello, friends and fellow wrestling fanatics. My name is PHS, and this is the one and only Shootcast. This is a show dedicated to going back and rewatching all the wrestling that I've missed over the years, because I fell out of it. You know, I hit 13, 14, started getting interested in girls and cars and all that kind of stuff, and just fell out of watching wrestling. You know, I didn't watch it week by week, and then I got jobs and, you know, just grew up. Life got in the way. But I wanted to go back and do this as kind of a passion project, because over the last couple of years, I've been getting reacquainted with WWE, and then that branched out to, you know, NXT and Ring of Honor and New Japan and Impact and ECW and all these kind of crazy shit. And now we got AEW that I'm keeping up with, and all these people and all these independents. It's crazy how much wrestling there is out there. And I love it because I never run out of shit to watch. But I do run out of people that actually want to hear me talk about it. So, the purpose of this podcast is so that I have an outlet for all this pent-up wrestling knowledge and things I want to talk about and things I just think are fucking cool. There's a way for me to get it out of my head so I'm not pissing off my family and friends and alienating people like, you know, you will do when you just talk about something that they don't care about. But here in this first episode, I thank you guys for coming and taking this journey with me. But here in this first episode, I'd like to talk about King of the Ring 1996. And the reason I chose this is because, one, it's one of the few pay-per-views that I actually got to see when I was a child. And, you know, when it came out, I was about 11 years old. I was 9, about to be, or 10, about to be 11. And I remember it because growing up in a predominantly Baptist town, you know, very Bible thumping, you go to church every Sunday. If you miss a Sunday, people come by your house to see what's wrong. All that. You know, growing up in that kind of environment, to have Steve Austin, who in this, spoilers, Steve Austin wins King of the Ring in this, but he coined the phrase Austin 316. To give a little background, he was wrestling Jake the Snake Roberts for the King of the Ring title. You know, the honorary title of being King of the Ring. And he beat him with a Stone Cold Stunner, which had just kind of become a thing. Like, he had just done it on the previous pay-per-view for the first time in ring. And he beat him with a Stone Cold Stunner. They go on, and he becomes King of the Ring. And he's sitting there, he's giving his coronation speech. And Jake the Snake Roberts had gone through a lot of life changes. He'd been heavily into alcohol. He'd been living kind of waywardly. He was estranged from his family. And now at 41, he's trying to get back into wrestling. He's trying to get his life on track. And so he turned his life to the Lord and started trying to live a little more righteous. And he was coming across a little bit holier than thou. And I think that was the angle that they were trying to get. It was, you know, you go from Jake the Snake Roberts, who people were just all like, this man's fucking nuts because he's got a snake in a bag all over the place, to Jake the Snake, Jake the Savior, who has been saved and is talking about the higher power and how the Lord's going to lift him up from obscurity and vanquish his enemies and all that kind of stuff. But you get the amazing quote from Stone Cold Steve Austin of, you sit there and you thump your Bible and you say your prayers and it doesn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Well, Austin 3:16 said, I just whooped your ass. Now that is just, you know, objectively awesome and unequivocally badass. And that's why Steve Austin is one of the greatest promo people in the business, in history. That's why he's one of the best of all time, is because you get him in front of a mic, he speaks his mind, he just says shit and it just comes out and just flows. It's awesome. But coming from the background that I did, I thought lightning was going to strike the TV. This man just blasphemed on national television. I thought it was going to be crazy. And I looked over at my brother's friends. And granted, I'm 10. They're probably all 14, 15. And they were just like covering their mouths like, holy shit, did he just say what I think he said? But it was awesome to me. And it sticks in my memory because One, it was one of the few times I'd ever seen anybody say ass on TV, because it wasn't like today where, they could say shit. But it was one of those times that I was like, wow, something just changed. Something just clicked. And apparently behind the scenes, Vince McMahon had the same idea. Something just clicked in his head that he was like, that's attitude. That's what we need. That's what we need more of. And so thus you started the time period of, Stone Cold Steve Austin being just Billy Badass and running around beating the shit out of anybody. You had Brian Pillman with his crazy ass. May he rest in peace. You had D-Generation X, with Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who then became Triple H. But then you had Shawn Michaels with his increasingly difficult personality to deal with. And you just started this whole snowballing effect that if you hadn't had any of this stuff happen, you wouldn't have had people like The Rock get over. Well, granted, The Rock's talented enough. I think he would have got over anyway. But you wouldn't have people like The Rock in the incarnation that we had him, of the pie-eating, jabroni-beating, eyebrow-raising person. You wouldn't have had him get over, because you wouldn't have had these guys that were traditionally like heels. They were not baby faces. They were not nice, sweet, innocent people. You had these people that were coming out there. They got a chip on their shoulder. They got something to prove, and they're going to kick some ass and take some names, and they don't give a damn who is going on, who it's going to be. Another reason I picked this is because this is around the beginning of the Monday Night War, when it really started kicking up and getting heated. You had, previous to this, you had the curtain call at Madison Square Garden, when Kevin Nash and Razor Ramon had left the company. You had the Montreal Screwjob, where Bret Hart left the company. You had all these things leading up to this time period in WWE and professional wrestling as a whole. So this, I thought, was a great place to start, because the drama and the storyline and the growth of the company, the evolution of the business into what we know it is today, kind of started right about here. This is when they started kind of dropping old school things. But to get into the actual nitty gritty of what happened at King of the Ring, you had this weird kind of surreal storyline of Shawn Michaels being accused of having the hots for or trying to get with the British Bulldog's wife. Now, granted, the British Bulldog's wife was the sister of Owen and Bret Hart. And it's just this weird thing where, you're going to have a grudge against somebody that's trying to come after your wife. But this was back when Shawn Michaels was the Heartbreak Kid. Shawn Michaels was this heartthrob that all the ladies wanted to swoon over, and he was one of the sexiest men in the world. And I think this was before he posed in Playgirl, or it might have been right after. But you do all this stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, he's, this Lothario that's out here just trying to scam chicks and do whatever he can. And then the British Bulldog was kind of being built up as like, oh, I'm the stalwart married man that I will defend the honor of my wife and all that. And then you had Owen Hart being like half a heel. He just kind of acting like a dick. And he came out and did the whole, I'm going to do color commentary at this pay-per-view, and just talking shit. He was being Jerry the King Lawler, because Jerry the King Lawler had a match in this pay-per-view. But you had that storyline. Then you had this weird thing with Sonny and the Godwins and all the tag team stuff. It was really weird, because Billy Gunn had kissed Sonny when she was with the Godwins. And the Godwins, unfortunately, their gimmick is to be hillbillies. And I come from like the Branson, Missouri area, so it kind of touches a nerve with me that these guys got over as big as they did, because I feel like that's what the rest of the country thought of people down here in northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, is that we're all walking around with overalls on, barefoot, with chewing tobacco in her lip and slopping the hogs. But that's just a chip that, a burden I have to bear. It's a chip on my shoulder. But you had this thing where she did a kind of a heel turn as a manager and turned away from the Godwins and went with the Guns and the Smoking Guns. And there was this weird thing with the kiss at the previous pay-per-view where Billy Gunn just basically laid one on her and convinced her to come work for them. And that was okay. I mean, I could see the narrative. I could see where creative was going with that. But the weirdest thing is that Ahmed Johnson had a match with Goldust. And this is back in like full-on Goldust days where Dustin Rhodes was hardcore into the Goldust thing. Like, there was no, I wipe this makeup off when I go home. No, he seemed like he slept in that shit, and he was wearing the gold wig and quoting movies and doing all this, classic Goldust. Everybody loves it. Dustin Rhodes is one of the greatest in-ring performers that has ever graced the ring. He is by far one of the best in the world. And I love him to death, but some of this old 1990s Goldust shit is freaky. Well, they had a whole storyline where he had given mouth-to-mouth to Ahmed Johnson and basically, like, Frenched him. Like, tongue-kissed him. And that set up this whole grudge match between them at King of the Ring is because, Ahmed Johnson wants some payback. And he comes out and just lays into Dustin Rhodes. I mean, he starts beating the ever-living brakes off of him. And then they're going back and forth, and eventually Goldust gets the upper hand, and he lays another one on him. And this makes Ahmed go nuts. He picks him up, starts choking him, beating him about the head and shoulders, doing all that good stuff. Damn near got DQ'd. But they had this freaky thing, and I mean, nowadays that shit wouldn't work. Now, granted, nowadays we're more woke, and if Twitter is any indication, you have Dustin Rhodes wrestling as the Natural AEW now, teaming with, I think it's Sonny. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the openly gay wrestler that is at AEW that I love to death. I mean, the guy's a great performer. It's entertaining as shit. If you get a chance to watch any of the AEW pay-per-views, yeah, definitely check them out because their whole roster is just the people that you wouldn't expect. The people that WWE either for some reason fired or just let go or anything like that, or just never even looked at. But the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, they went out and they scoured the world for the best in-ring performers because they want that title of We Are the Elite to stick. But, like I said, I'm not being sponsored by anybody, so I can talk about everybody. And if that gets some people mad, I'm sorry. I gave my last fuck to my wife in the divorce. So I apologize if I offend anybody for, one, by my language, but also talking about some company they don't want to hear about because it's my show and I'm going to talk about whoever I want. And it's going to be in the description what I'm talking about. So if you don't want to hear about New Japan, if you don't want to hear about AEW, if you don't want any spoilers for Lucha Underground, then please, by all means, skip some episodes or stop listening to me entirely. But please, don't shitpost me. Don't haze me. Don't at me on Twitter with your, I can't believe you talked about that. And that's, you're insensitive to this, you're insensitive to that. Miss me with that bullshit. I don't need it. And I apologize if I'm just setting this off on kind of a negative tone. I usually try to keep it upbeat and keep it positive, but in this day and age, there are so many better things to do than get online and start adding somebody and talking about all the things they're doing wrong. If we can't support each other as fans, if we can't support each other as human beings, then there's no hope for us going forward. And as the father of a beautiful little girl, who of course I'm very partial to, but as a father of a beautiful little girl, I'm trying to raise her to make this world a better place. and to find a better place in it. And I would hope that you, as a human being and as a listener and as a wrestling fan, because you see all the good that wrestlers do. They use their power. People like Roman Reigns using his platform to make awareness of cancer research, or people like Cody Rhodes and the Elite over at AEW promoting and supporting wrestlers with disabilities and handicaps. And you got all these people out here in Lucha Underground, like reaching back out to their communities and raising people up and starting schools to keep people away from gangs and get them into wrestling, give them a positive outlet for their violence or their anger or their emotional issues. All these things, these people using these platforms are wonderful. And we as fans can support them in that and also support each other. And that's the only soapbox I'm going to get on today. But moving on, at the event, you had all this crazy stuff going on between Ahmed Johnson and Goldust. You had a match between Jerry the King Lawler and the Ultimate Warrior, which this is actually the last pay-per-view event that the Ultimate Warrior took part in. And it was kind of bittersweet watching it, but he beat the hell out of Jerry the King Lawler, even though Jerry the King Lawler tried to cheat and do everything he could to win, because that's who he was. He was a heel. He was like Ric Flair. Ric Flair was the greatest of all time. But he also was like, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I love when Booker T says that. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. And it's just one of those things that you got to watch it and remember who the character was and how it's different from where he is today. Like today, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's Jerry the King Lawler. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's been on the commentary desk for years and all that kind of stuff. But back then, he was in the ring performer, so he had to keep the heat on. He had to keep the pressure on, and had to keep reminding people that I'm here and I'm relevant and I do all this. But you had that, a match between Ultimate Warrior and Jerry the King Lawler, and then you also had a match between Mankind, Mick Foley, and The Undertaker, which, man, that's some crazy stuff. I mean, think of it nowadays like the Fiend Bray Wyatt versus the Demon Finn Balor. It's one of those things where they're a little too similar. There's the conflict there isn't really who's more powerful, or it's not a babyface versus a heel, who's wrong, who's right. It's more like which one of these unstoppable forces is going to give in first. Which one of these is going to break? And at this point, this is back in the day when you could see The Undertaker lose. Like, he was the Phenom, but, I mean, he wasn't the legend that he is today. You could see The Undertaker lose, and he was actually at pay-per-views, but he was on Raw. He was on there on a weekly basis. They developed whole storylines around him. So, he was there. He was present. It wasn't just a once every now and again, people hear his music. Well, people heard his music and started flipping out anyway. But it's not like people hear his music and start losing their goddamn minds because, oh my God, The Undertaker's here. I can't believe it. It was more like, oh, this is one of my favorite wrestlers. But they see him all the time. So it wasn't like an event that The Undertaker was here. And this is also back in the days when Paul Bearer was still alive. May he rest in peace. But Paul Bearer is one of my favorite things about wrestling in this era. Because Paul Bearer was one of those characters that, like, there's no way in hell that this guy is even remotely real. Now, granted, this is 1996, so kayfabe is still in effect. So they are still trying to keep the fourth wall up. They're trying to keep people believing and buying the hook. They're trying to keep people buying into the story that The Undertaker is this twisted, killer, evil Undertaker that comes out here and he beats the hell out of people for a living, even though in real life he'd be more of a, Rob Zombie character, House of a Thousand Corpses type of dude than a wrestler. But they're trying to keep the illusion that he is this unstoppable force, that he is this dark presence that just sweeps over his enemies. But that's why you had Mick Foley, and Mankind was a perfect kind of foil for that, because he's just fucking nuts. I mean, 2 bolts shy of a dozen, 2 fries short of a Happy Meal. The lights are on, nobody's home, the hamster wheel's turning, but the hamster died a long time ago type of crazy. And if you see Mick Foley in real life, get a chance to talk to him, he's kind of that way anyway. But definitely the character was supposed to be meant as this twisted up psycho type of person. And I mean, these are the characters that paved the way for Finn Balor the Demon, for Bray Wyatt the Fiend, for, later on in the Attitude Era, you had people that were dressing up like fucking vampires. Edge and Christian were fucking vampires for a little bit. And I'm thanking God we're past the whole Twilight bullshit and that the vampire phenomenon is left again. It'll come back again in my lifetime. Hell, when my daughter's in college, it'll probably come back again. I'm going to have to hear about all this other crazy bullshit that she's on, but they paved the way for those type of characters, those otherworldly, supernatural type of characters. But then again, this is when kayfabe was still in effect, and kayfabe, if you don't know the terminology, is kind of like it's hidden. If somebody says shoot, that's real. That's why I named this the Shootcast. That's why our hashtag is keep it shoot, keep it real. But kayfabe is keep things hidden. It's, the people, names like The Undertaker, names like Hunter Hearst Helmsley, all that kind of stuff. Those are their kayfabe names, and CM Punk, that's his kayfabe name. But him shooting a promo with Triple H and saying, this isn't CM Punk talking to Triple H, this is Phil Brooks talking to Paul Levesque. And that was their thing, that he used their shoot names to tell him, and broke kayfabe to emphasize his point of I'm serious about this shit. But all of that aside, The Undertaker could sell that he is this unstoppable force and all that kind of stuff, because he was just that talented. Mankind, Mick Foley, could sell that he was this nut job that likes sticking his freaking hand in people's mouths. And my dad was a dental lab technician, and so just through osmosis, I've learned a lot about like the nerves and the palate of your mouth and all that kind of stuff over the years, just from paying attention to his job a little bit. I used to be his janitor at his offices, so I picked up a little bit along the way. And I can tell you that the nerves in the bottom palate of your mouth, if somebody sticks their hand in there and presses down on it, that can cause you to pass the fuck out. That is a shoot legitimate submission move. Now, granted, I know they do it in a way to be safe and all that kind of stuff, because these are professional athletes, very highly trained. They keep themselves safe because there's no way they could earn a living if they were hurting each other left and right. But I can tell you that that'll knock you the fuck out. Like, that is a legitimate move. And so to see this, and this is the Undertaker in his prime, so he's striking everybody, he's beating the shit out of them, it's great. But I say all that to lead up to King of the Ring, and my focus on this, my hope for this, is to be able to watch a few matches and kind of give my commentary on him, and then, you guys watch along at home, or this might inspire you to go pay for the WWE Network, only $9.99, or, look up AEW All In from last year, or Double or Nothing from earlier this year, or go to, High Spots Wrestling Network and go download that so you can watch Ring of Honor and Impact and all that stuff, or New Japan. However you guys want to access this, or if you just want to listen to me talk about it and imagine or remember watching it yourself, that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and start the actual pay-per-view and watch it while I'm sitting here talking to you guys. And that's going to be how these shows go. Hopefully it'll become a little more produced, a little more polished as I go along. Bear with me. This is the first time I've podcasted in a while. And this is the first time I've really recorded anything where I'm commentating what's going on. But we're going to start with the Marc Mero Steve Austin match that actually won King of the Ring. And then we're going to go on to the Mankind Undertaker and Shawn Michaels versus the British Bulldog. And hopefully you guys are watching along with me and you can enjoy this. So let's start with this. We got Owen Hart walking out to the thing while Vince McMahon and JR are sitting there trying to commentate. And wow, going back in time and seeing Vince McMahon as anything other than Mr. McMahon is freaking weird to me. I mean, it is weird to watch this guy that we've learned to hate, mostly because of Stone Cold Steve Austin, that we've learned to come to loathe. And, we hear his music and we cheer and we boo and we do all that kind of stuff because, I got to say, picking that No Chance in Hell, that was a good choice on on all that. But watching this, you get Steve Austin. He beat Savio Vega with the first Stone Cold Stunner, and that is crazy. It's very different from the Stone Cold Stunner we know today, where he kicks you in the boot, kicks you in the stomach, flips around, Stone Cold stuns you, all that kind of stuff. Back then, it was a little more clunky. It wasn't as smooth. But, look at Steve Austin. It's my main man, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he's svelte as fuck. I mean, he's skinny. He's all kinds of, tight like a tiger and all that. And you see him later on, he's put some bulk on and all that kind of stuff, especially after the neck surgery. His traps were huge and all that kind of stuff from working him out. But you got Marc Mero, who is somebody that I wasn't familiar with, really, before watching this. But Marc Mero is what you would call a high flyer nowadays. He can do the Hurricane Rana from the top rope. He does, head scissors. He does tope suicinas, where he jumps through the ropes. All that kind of stuff. The lung blower. He's flipping things over, but he's not Ricochet. He's not Cedric Alexander. He's not doing things like we, think of him nowadays as a high flyer. He's not one of those 205 Live guys. He's just, very agile, very quick, and all that. And against Stone Cold Steve Austin was never the quickest in-ring competitor. He was a lot more about, power, striking ability, and just having gas in the tank. I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin would outlast some of these guys that would just run around the ring and do all that kind of stuff. Imagine Stone Cold Steve Austin against Seth Rollins, man. I mean, that's kind of what this match is. That's kind of who Wildman was. Marc Mero is very much in the same school as Seth Rollins would be nowadays. But they just do some general wrestling moves. Stone Cold is definitely a mat wrestler. He's definitely one of those guys that he wants to get you on the ground, he wants to work you, he wants to work your body, get you tired out, and all that kind of stuff, and wear you down to the point where you can't do any of that high flying, running around, doing all that kind of stuff. They lock up, they do all these things. But the Wild Man, Marc Mero, I got a lot of respect for him because he's definitely one of those good in-ring workers that can do it, that can do the job. He's not, and keep it entertaining for the people. Now, I never understood the whole concept of having a manager. Back in the 90s, and even today, they still have some, but they have a female manager that comes out, and basically all they were glorified cheerleaders. In this era, Sunny she has a little bit of a job, and is vocal and all that kind of stuff, and seems to have a plan for whoever she's managing at the time. But, then you have women like Sable or Marlena with Goldust. They don't really seem to have a point but to come out in a snazzy dress, low-cut top, and cheer on the dude that's in the ring. Now, granted, with Marlena, I know that was because she and Goldust were husband and wife. And I don't know if she's his shoot wife or if she's just, one of the characters, his valet. But I'm very happy with the women's revolution because, like, watching this stuff, I'll sit and watch WWE with my daughter, and she tells me she wants to be a WWE superstar. She wants to be Charlotte Flair. She wants to be Becky Lynch. She loves Bayley. She loves the New Day. I love the New Day, but she absolutely loves the New Day with the unicorns and the bright colors and all that kind of stuff. But I won't let her watch stuff like this. Mostly because of the way that they show women. Sunny almost falling out of everything. They see these girls in these nightgowns, or not nightgowns, but these dresses that they look like they're showgirls in Vegas or something like that. But also, I can't let her watch this because of, Jerry the King Lawler. I mean, good Lord, that dude got away with so much shit that would not get away with today. I mean, nowadays he kind of says it in, like, joking to himself of, yeah, I remember back in the day when I used to call them puppies, and he used to talk about that stuff, but going back and listening to it, like, you don't really get a clear recollection of how he was listening to him talk today. He'll make a joke about it and kind of try to play it off, but then, like, it was borderline sexual harassment the way that he's talking about this stuff back in the day. Talking about all this stuff and all these women. It's not anything I want to expose my daughter to. I know she's gonna have to deal with enough bullshit growing up, but I don't have to show her what things were like whenever I was a little kid and how people acted. But one of the things I've always liked about Stone Cold is, ever since I was like 18 or 19, I started shaving my head. And I just did it because I thought I looked a lot better with a shaven head. But one of the things I like about Stone Cold is if you ever get a chance to hear Steve Austin talk about why he shaved his head for the Stone Cold character, it's actually pretty, it's a pretty good story as far as he shaved his head for the Stone Cold character because he had started to lose his hair. And he went from being like, this long blonde haired dude to having a bald spot and all that, and he didn't really want to, keep it in the ring. He didn't think it looked good on TV, so he shaved it off. But I always liked him being bald because I thought it was tactical. Because you always see somebody grabbing somebody by the hair and throwing them down, all that kind of stuff. I thought Stone Cold was just all like, nah, screw all that bullshit. I'm gonna shave it off. They can't grab a damn thing on me. I always thought that was just a tactical choice on his part. And then I hear, oh no, I was losing my hair, so I just cut it all off. But now they do the test of strength, which is something I've always loved. It's one of those classic wrestling things. But I always think it's crazy how people look surprised whenever they get kicked in the stomach because in the middle of the test of strength. And they just expect somebody to be super honorable and not take advantage of that. But this match is actually really good. If you're just judging it basically on in-ring ability and these guys working together and doing all that kind of stuff, they do a really good job. And, Steve Austin's marching around the ring, cussing, doing all that kind of stuff, and, reading his lips. You can tell he's calling him a son of a bitch and doing all this kind of stuff. And then you got Sable walking around in a cat suit, which I never understood what the hell is Sable's point of being out there. Like, later on, yeah, whenever she starts being in-ring, yeah, she was one of the good, very good female wrestlers back in the day, women wrestlers. But I don't get the whole valet thing. I don't get why would you just have a pretty girl following you around. I mean, being a adolescent boy at one point, I get why you would have a pretty girl following these guys around. You know, so you get dads and young boys to watch and be all like, woohoo, I want to see it. But I just can't see a woman going, hey, yeah, this is something I want to do. I want to follow around this oiled up, muscly guy and look pretty for him and then not have anything to do. This doesn't really make any sense to me. But, you know, back in the day, you had to do what you had to do for a career. And now Stone Cold just ragdolling Marc Mero. It's just, as I say, he's throwing elbows in his face. You know, dragged him out on the apron. Ugh. He just mean. That's why they called him the Rattlesnake back in the day. And it was before he was the icon and the legend and all that kind of stuff. It was back when he just didn't give a fuck. You know? Even to the point where he'd like stand there and stare at the cameraman like, you back the hell up off me, boy. But I'll give it to Marc Mero, man. He's putting up a real hell of a fight. You know, he's sitting there, he's taking his punishment, and then he's giving it right back to Steve. And that's what you like to see. That's what you need to see at a pay-per-view. Those are the kind of events you need to see. But pay-per-views back in the 90s were all kinds of mixed up. Like, this is called King in the Ring, and they started it with the King in the Ring bout. Now, you know, me, if I was scheduling it, I would have ended it with the King of the Ring bout, or made the King of the Ring bout like the first of two main events. But because they had the WWE title on the line, which I'm going to apologize because this changed names like 20 fucking times in the intervening 20-something years. So I don't know if it's called the WWE Championship at this time, or Heavyweight Champion, or World Title, or whatever it is. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to call it the WWE Championship. Well, you had that battle going on between Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog. And then you had the match between Undertaker and Mankind. But again, it's called King of the Ring. And this is back when King of the Ring was a big deal. So I would have put it towards the end and not had these guys be the starting match of the night. Now, granted, nowadays it's a lot busier. Live events sell out a lot more and make a lot more money for WWE. So you could have had the pre-show, the King of the Ring pre-show, and you know, had 3 or 4 matches there, with the tag team division and stuff like that. But in this, you've got everything kind of just mishmashed in, and it's like there wasn't as much forethought and planning that went into this as they do nowadays, now that WWE is the multi-billion-dollar company that it is today. But, you know, Marc Mero is just showing a lot of strength and a lot of skill, and he's kind of throwing Austin around the ring, and, you know, his power is on display. But Stone Cold is definitely the more powerful of the two. You know, he's got him in that Boston Crab. Oh, that looks horrible. And then, of course, they got a big old cleavage shot of Sable, as they're going to have. But there's been... Steve Austin throws some mean Irish whips. I mean, I don't care how athletic you are and all that kind of stuff, but the bump on an Irish whip, that just looks hellaciously painful. And Marc Mero with the coffin drop. Coffin drop straight to the forehead of Steve Austin. That's awesome. That is an awesome thing to watch, because he just... And it's back in the day where the cameras weren't that close, so you didn't really see if they didn't take the bump right. But these guys had to sell it, because also the the guardrails around the ring was smaller, and the guardrails around the ring were closer. So the people that were up front, there weren't as many people, so people could actually sit down and then watch. They didn't have, it wasn't standing room only. So they're sitting there watching this, and they can see everything. So you had to sell everything so much harder, you know. And it wasn't for the TV audience, it was for the live audience there. That's another one of those things that's changed since then, is that now a lot of things are done for the benefit of the TV audience because there's millions of people watching around the world. But back then, they had maybe 100,000 watching on pay-per-view, but the real money was being spent by the 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 that they had in the arena at the live show. So they got to sell it for them. They don't have to sell it for TV. They got to sell it for them. And, back shot to the apron. Good Lord. And Marc Mero over the top rope, just flipping out. This is where he busted the hell out of Steve Austin's lip. He had to take 10 stitches for his busted lip. That somersault plancha just landed straight on his mouth. Oh. I mean, and that's a shoot injury. That wasn't a cut or anything like that. That wasn't, he didn't razor blade himself. That was definitely one of those things. And then he goes Tope Suicida. Straight through, dives off, and they land on the concrete. Golly. That is a hard match to watch. You know, Wildman was doing it big. Doing it big. He's going off the top ropes. He's doing all kinds of stuff. Drop kick to Stone Cold. And that's another thing that made Stone Cold that I've always loved about him, is that he sells that bump. He sells that fall. You know, he sells the other person's move and makes them look genuinely like, I'm getting my ass whooped. You know, I just got knocked the fuck out. Even though they got to keep this stuff going. I mean, he'll do stuff like this. Like, there he is. He just fell down. He just flopped. You know, was dead on his feet for a second. And all that kind of stuff. And, you know, having seen this before, you know, ooh. The damn Hurricane Rana from the top rope. Oh, Lord. That's like the third one he's taken. Good Lord. And he still kicks out. Still kicks out. Yeah. That's great. Don't argue with the ref. You're giving him time to... Oh. What's he doing? Ooh. He dropped him straight throat first on the top rope. And he still kicks out. Marc Mero showing a lot of heart. But now he's fired up. Now Steve's fired up. He got up and he's like, let me tell you something, you son of a bitch. And the stunner. Oh. And he got the win. I mean, great. We all knew he was going to win. I already told you guys earlier on the podcast that he ends up facing Jake the Snake Roberts for it. But, you know, you got this. They start with Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Marc Mero. Then you got Vader versus Jake the Snake. And Vader gets disqualified. He gets DQ'd. Then he beats the ever-living hell out of Jake the Snake. And we're going to skip that. But then they had all this stuff about Camp Cornette, which a guy named Jim Cornette, he was a manager, he was for Vader, he was for the British Bulldog, he was for Owen Hart, you know, a couple other people. This guy seems weird. He's walking around with a tennis racket and running interference between the people and the ref. Mr. Perfect was one of his wrestlers. It's some of those characters that I don't get anymore. Like, we don't have characters like that nowadays. I mean, the most recent one I can remember was, dang it, I can't remember his name. But the guy that was with Jack Swagger and Cesaro with the We the People movement. in modern WWE. That's the closest thing I can remember. But you got these guys that are managing and have these whole little cliques going around. But his whole deal was kind of weird. He looked like an extra from Caddyshack, like one of the people from there, one of the rich people that would have been all like, "Carry my bags, boy," and all that. You don't have characters like that anymore. But yeah, Vader gets DQ'd, and Jake the Snake Roberts wins by DQ, but gets the hell beat out of him. Might have dislocated ribs. I mean, he's not going into his match with Stone Cold 100%, and Stone Cold gives no fucks and beats the shit out of him. But after that, you had Jerry the King Lawler versus Ultimate Warrior, which, you know, Jerry Lawler is definitely plays up the heel, making fun of people, doing all that kind of stuff. As a fellow Tennessee, person born, I always feel very, very connected to Jerry Lawler. He's doing a good job. And prior to this, he beat the Ultimate Warrior over the head with a hand painted portrait for Vince McMahon. And that's the one thing you find out watching these behind the scenes stuff and all that. Jerry Lawler's an actual really good artist. I mean, straight up, genuinely talented painter. And that's one of those things that's really awesome. But now we got the Ultimate Warrior coming out, and they got Pyro with a giant W and all that kind of stuff, which is hanging over people, which freaked me the fuck out. But the Ultimate Warrior is just great. He's one of those awesome guys. And it's really crazy to think that this is the last time he'd be on a WWF pay-per-view, and one of the last times he'd be in WWF period for 18 years, till he came back for his Hall of Fame induction. That's nuts, but I love it. He's always pulling on the ropes and look crazy. I mean, like, genuinely look nuts. Like, nowadays we'd think he was on meth or some shit like that, the way he was running around. And that dude was just high on life. And Jerry the King Lawler just starts off with a back shot. Just hits him in the back with his scepter and starts beating the shit out of him, choking him, doing all this kind of stuff. He was a really dirty player. And that's one of those things that can make you famous in wrestling, is if you just be the dirtiest player in the game. You be the dude that everybody just knows whenever they're wrestling you, they got to watch their back, because you're going to be out there to beat the shit out of them. And I mean, they barely even started the match. But he just taking it to Ultimate Warrior, which is crazy to see somebody like Jerry the King Lawler, who's, more of a round shape like me, as opposed to the Ultimate Warrior, who was like nothing but muscle. Like, his muscles have muscles that they flex. It's just crazy to see. And then Lawler, of course, trying to do everything he can to get an upper hand. He's choking him. He's doing stuff like that. I guess this is a no disqualification match, because holy shit. And that was another great thing about Jerry the King Lawler. He'd talk shit through the entire match. You could be kicking him and he'd be all like, "Is that all you got? Is that all you got? Let me tell you something." And all that. And he did that heel sneak. Like that sneak, like I'm sneaking up behind the ref and I'm gonna jump out and do something. And all that kind of stuff. It is great. It's just great to watch, because people don't wrestle like this anymore. Since kayfabe went down, that's one of the things with kayfabe going away and them transitioning to, like, this is performance, this is sports entertainment, we are performers and all that. It took the character work out of it. I mean, it's just like when I'm running a game of D&D, I've got certain people at the table that will continue to RP even when we take like a smoke break or bathroom break or something like that. They'll sit there and stay in character. And I can tell whenever they're asking me a question as me, as the DM, or when they're asking a question as their character, because they'll stay in character. But watching stuff like this, you take that away, and these people can't stay in that character like they normally do. You know, they don't sell it as hard as they did back in the day. Like, nobody sells as hard as Jerry the King Lawler is selling it right now. You know, or the Ultimate Warrior is selling it right now. Nobody these days has to sell things that hard. Because we all know that this is sports entertainment, that it's not real. Man, with the DDT, he did a pile driver and the Ultimate Warrior just rolled up like, you know, you just gave him a shot of adrenaline. That's awesome. And now he's pounding him in the back. And he's still running around like, I'm the best. Ultimate Warrior is like John Cena back in the day. He was maybe not in like attitude, but just in the crowd reaction and the way that he carried himself in the ring. He was that dude that, you know, I'm here to get the party going. I'm here to get the crowd hyped. I'm here to get them on their feet, yelling, screaming, doing all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, the Ultimate Warrior wins because he's the Ultimate Warrior. And Jerry the King Lawler couldn't win. He couldn't, you know, unless he got him in the first few minutes with all the underhanded tactics. But it's great seeing the crowd shots because I'm just sort of going like, holy crap. I remember when my parents used to dress like that. They're seeing little kids, and I'm like, I remember when I had to be dressed like that. Good Lord. This stuff is crazy. But you have matches like that where, you know, I don't think that's a pay-per-view level match. I really don't. That seemed like it would be, you know, mid-card on Monday Night Raw. Maybe. They might do a little bit of build-up, a little bit of work in the back of, you know, doing promos, and then have people come out. But it doesn't seem like a big pay-per-view level match. But that goes again to what I was saying. This is the 90s, and things aren't done as clean back then. Like, the in-ring work, very clean. Very good, because they're playing for the live audience, not for the TV, not for the DVD camera or whatever. But this stuff, the production side isn't as clean as it is nowadays, which, you know, is understandable. They've had 20 some odd years to get it right. But now we've got Mankind versus The Undertaker. And they've built this up over time. And every time, Mankind has used the mandible claw on Undertaker and won. And in this match, he does do the same thing. He wins. But in this match, Paul Bearer actually tries to help by smashing the urn over Mankind's head. And Mankind catches it, pops Undertaker in the face with it, and then gets him in the mandible claw. And then Mankind proceeds to chase Paul Bearer down. We assume, we don't see, they don't show it on camera. But this fight is a fight. Like, I actually believed like it was turning into a shoot fight because Undertaker just straight up gave no fucks. This is purple gloves, purple boots Undertaker, and he's just popping them off. He's just firing away with the strikes. Just quick hands, thunder hands, man. And Mick Foley, Mama Foley's baby boy, doing a great job. Doing elbow drops, leg drops. You know, he's not doing any, you know, rope work, but this is the Undertaker in his heyday. You know, pre-Legend, where he could take a loss, and it made him better of a character. It made you want to see him succeed the next time. and come back and beat whoever it was. And now you got Paul Bearer. Oh, yeah, Paul Bearer tried to hit Mankind over the head and ended up hitting The Undertaker, and then Mankind got him with that mandible claw and knocked him out. And I'm sorry, but Paul Bearer's face, I love Paul Bearer's face. He's like a living cartoon. You know, his reaction to everything is great. And I do have to say Mankind's choice, mixed choice for his ring music, his entrance music, the classical piano is just freaking creepy. Just creepy as hell. Because you got all this stuff, this drama that's built up and all that. And then the dude walks off to this piano sonata, hugging a chair like it's his baby child and all that. And of course, Paul Bearer is running. You know, he's waddling his big ass out of there. You know, and no disrespect to Paul Bearer. You know, may he rest in peace and all that. I hope he's in a better place with that, you know, the great squared circle in the sky. But he's just so fun to watch. You know, the only one we have comparable to Paul Bearer nowadays is Paul Heyman. But Paul Heyman isn't playing a caricature or anything like that. Paul Heyman's playing Paul Heyman, just Paul Heyman times 10. Paul Heyman amped up. But now we've got Mr. Perfect. Kurt Hennig is going to be the guest referee for Shawn Michaels versus the British Bulldog. And I love him. Curtis Axel is Mr. Perfect's son. And I think that he does his father proud. He does a good job. Curtis Axel is one of those guys that I love watching. I don't see that he's getting a lot of... He's not getting the opportunities that you think he'd be getting for his level of performer. They're kind of putting him off into the journeyman territory, like him and Bo Dallas. But I love watching them. Like the B Team, whenever they first won the tag team titles, which I'm getting ahead of myself in WWE, but when B Team won the tag team titles, I was proud. I was hooping and hollering. I was happy. That was awesome. But now we got Goldust versus Ahmed Johnson. And like I told you before, they had this weird thing of Goldust giving him mouth-to-mouth and like tongue-kissing him and stuff. But Goldust comes out and does this little pageantry thing, and, you know, the gold glitter comes out and all that kind of stuff. But then Ahmed Johnson, dude, he literally comes busting through the doors because it's King of the Ring, so they have pages opening the doors for... everybody to come out. Ahmed Johnson comes running through those, knocks these motherfuckers over, and then goes straight after Goldust and plants his ass. Just plants him. And it's just all like, I told you not to mess with me, and just starts beating the hell out of him. Now, you know, just to get through this match quickly, they go back and forth for a minute. At this point, Goldust is the Intercontinental Champion, and Ahmed Johnson takes the Intercontinental Championship. And what made this a big deal that I didn't realize until I was rewatching this is that Ahmed Johnson was the first African American Intercontinental Champion. And I'm not going to get into cover the Raw following this, but Ahmed Johnson comes out and says and tells people on the next Raw, they make mention, you're the first African American Intercontinental Championship. And he says, I'm not defending this for African Americans. I'm defending this for every American, for everybody. You know, I'm an Intercontinental Champion for the white, the black, the red, the orange, the purple, the polka dot, whoever. And I gotta say, man, I'm looking forward to watching him on Raw as I go ahead, as I catch up with this stuff, because I'm gonna watch the episodes in between this and the next pay-per-view. and then just kind of give you guys a recap the next time I cover WWE. But this stuff is great, and he's one of those guys that I'm like, wow. You know, watching him now, I'd be like, that's a future Hall of Famer right there. That's somebody that deserves to be recognized for what he did for the business. And of course, Goldust needs to be a Hall of Famer because Dustin Rhodes is by far one of the best in-ring performers of all time. But he's had this weird like metrosexual Prince vibe going on in the mid-90s. It was just weird as shit. And they always put him up against like these hyper macho, super built, you know, Terry Crews looking, Joe Manganiello looking dudes and all that. And he's not built like that. And he's in a skin tight gold bodysuit, kind of doing this whole Liberace thing and spitting gold glitter in people's faces. He does such an amazing job. I mean, like, it just goes to show you can be cut and shredded, but you still probably aren't going to be the best wrestler in the ring. So Ahmed Johnson beats him with a spine buster, just plants his ass. And then picks him up. Ooh. The power of a pump. And that move, I love that. It's like, it's kind of like the mix between a Falcon Arrow and a Pedigree. So it's a wonderful thing, but now he's the Intercontinental Championship, and I love seeing that kind of stuff. That was a pay-per-view level match. That was awesome. And now moving on, we got a visit from Brian Pillman, who comes out and starts talking about how everybody's beneath him and all this kind of stuff. And now we got Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Jake Roberts, where Jake the Snake had injured ribs, was busted up. He's 41 years old. You know, he's all this kind of stuff. And he had all this stuff moving against him. And then Stone Cold comes out and just proceeds to beat the shit out of this old man and not give a damn about him. And then give his coronation speech where he says, you know, Austin 316 and all that. But then he goes, this kind of started his, this kind of started his rise. They started pushing him as a main eventer after this because they showed, you know, he could really do it. And I don't know if this was a behind-the-scenes thing or a working shoot. It was just a shoot deal, but it seems like Jake Snake Roberts really was pushing to get Austin over and wanted to help him out with that. And again, the stunner now is a lot slower. Is a lot more, you see a lot more, you're just picking people up, and like he'll literally pick somebody up and position their head on his shoulder. And I guess that's because he just wasn't as comfortable with it yet. So he just can't, you know, do it as quickly. Or he hadn't worked with it with enough people. So Stone Cold's the fourth King of the Ring. And god dang.
Because I'll thump your Bible and you say your prayers and it didn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass.
Sorry guys, I had to play it. I had to listen to it for a second.
And try to dig back some of that courage he had in his pride.
And god dang, if he just an asshole.
To every one of the WWF superstars.
And I love him. Everybody loved him because he was an asshole.
They're all on the list, and that's
he does great.
List, and I'm fixing to start running through all of them.
All right, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
And his remarks. 1996 WWF King of the Ring.
And then he pauses to tell people to piss off.
Give a damn if it's Davey Boy Smith or Shawn Michaels. Steve Austin's time has come. And when I get the shot, you're looking at the next WWF champion.
And he calls his shot.
Bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
He calls his shot against either Davey Boy Smith or Shawn Michaels, which is going to be Shawn Michaels. But he calls it and then says that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. And I mean, granted, his stuff gets cleaner and better as we go along, but that kicked off a lot. And then hear McMahon talk about it afterwards, like that's something we've never seen before. But now we got Shawn Michaels versus the British Bulldog. And if you haven't had a chance to see Shawn Michaels back in the day, back during his title reigns and stuff like that, good Lord, he was a great, I mean, he was just a wonderful in-ring performer. And that's not to give Davey Boy Smith anything less. You know, he's a wonderful performer as well, and gave him a lot to work with. But I mean, they work together. And now Shawn Michaels is beating the hell out of Jim Cornette, smacks him in the ass with his own with his own tennis racket. He does a great job. And the British Bulldog is showing power throughout the match, just overpowers all this kind of stuff. But Mr. Perfect was supposed to be the security blanket for Davey Boy Smith, for the British Bulldog, by being the special guest referee. But Gorilla Monsoon, who was the acting president at this time in WWF, sent out a different ref to be in the ring and Mr. Perfect to be out of the ring. This whole deal, I mean, that you wouldn't see that nowadays. I mean, we saw something kind of like it when the Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens, and they had Elias outside the ring. But it was more smoothly done than it is done here. And you got Michaels with the takedown, single arm takedown, got control. He does a great job. This is an awesome match to watch because like they did a perfect job building up the tension to it. You know, saying Shawn Michaels is trying to cheat with British Bulldog's wife, but of course Shawn Michaels denying it and being all like, you know, you're a pretty girl, but I never try to, you know, do anything, blah blah blah. But also being all like, I don't really give a shit. Like, screw you. I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna beat this, and I'm gonna retain my championship, which he goes on to do. He retains his championship, but afterwards, Jim Cornette and the British Bulldog and Owen Hart get in there and start trying to attack him. And that's... Oh, sweet chin music. He tuned up the band and went for it. But you got that, but then Ahmed Johnson comes out and defends him. So you got the new Intercontinental Champ defending the current WWE Champ. But then Vader comes out and just takes down Ahmed Johnson. Because Ahmed Johnson's a big boy, but Vader is a monster boy. Like, Vader was basically the Braun Strowman of this era. He was the equalizer. He was the one that came out and just, you know, did the work. But now you got Owen Hart beating the shit out of Shawn Michaels. British Bulldogs getting in on it. But then, here comes the Ultimate Warrior. Wow. The Ultimate Warrior. He comes out and gets in on it. And there's supposed to be, in the next pay-per-view, the team of Ahmed Johnson, Shawn Michaels, and the Ultimate Warrior versus Vader, the British Bulldog, and Owen Hart. But because of everything that happened with the Ultimate Warrior, he's out of here. And He doesn't get to return for the next pay-per-view. So they replaced him with Sid Psycho, or Psycho Sid, or something like that. But this is one of those things that's just fun to watch when like all these people come out and it's alliances that you never would have thought of. But they work. And you get excited. I wanted to see it. But Vader is too big of a guy to be going up to the top rope. That's damn near 400 pounds. That's crazy. But here comes the Ultimate Warrior and pushes his ass down. Yeah. I've had enough of this shit. This is back in the days where everybody was wearing tassels, not just the Young Bucks. Everybody was wearing tassels. It was great. It was wonderful. But see these guys standing in the ring, clearly all faces. They're clearly all the baby faces. And then everybody else are the heels and all that. Wonderful time. That's the way you end a pay-per-view. That's the way you end a big event. You need that. And of course, Shawn Michaels is standing there and they go to some young girl and show her. And she looks like she just got pregnant. Seeing all these guys flex in the ring. And 90s Pyro. It's so fun watching 90s Pyro. Because you watch 90s Pyro and think, like, that was really expensive back in the day. But nowadays, that's basically my 4th of July blowout. Camp Cornette, a whole bunch of crazy people. And they're interviewing this Cornette guy. The hell? Okay, he just started talking about this, obviously the Hispanic or Mexican trainer that was out there with Shawn Michaels, Jose somebody. Jim Cornette basically just accused him of pulling a switchblade on him, so he's like, see, that's the shit you could get away with back then. Nowadays, you gotta be like Samoa Joe, or somebody like that to be able to say some stupid shit and get it over. And not have people go, what the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with you? Good Lord. That's crazy. There's also back when the Slammies were a big deal. And people were just like, I'm a Slammy Award winner. That's a big deal. But promos were loud. And people yelling. Doing stuff like that. But good Lord. And everybody making fun of Jake the Snake's drinking problem. Like, I don't know. I don't know how cool that is. I don't know if I feel right about them making fun of Jake the Snake's drinking problem. Hardcore. His real problems. But following this, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. You had a rematch with Mankind, and leading up to the next podcast, you had a whole bunch of stuff that happened. But, like I said, this is just my first episode. I'll put some spit and some polish and some production on the next one. It's just, I wanted to get this out there because I've been wanting to talk about this specific pay-per-view for a long time. But, one, I'm the only person I know with the WWE Network that I see on a regular, but like, nobody I know has access to it. And then the few people I know that are WWE fans, they don't want to talk about something that's over 20 years old. So I just wanted to sit here and talk about this pay-per-view. I'm glad you guys stopped by. I hope you continue to keep checking back with us every week. I'm going to try to have new episodes up every Saturday. So I'm going to have episodes up every Saturday. And if we have a pay-per-view or a special event or something like that, then I'll make a bonus episode and I'll tweet about that. If you want to follow the show, you can find us on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/shoot podcast or /keep-it-shoot, sorry. Also on Anchor FM, anchor.fm /keep-it-shoot. and at Keep It Shoot on Twitter. Twitter is the number one way to get a hold of me, and the number one way to find out about what we're doing here at, I use the royal we, what I'm doing here at the Shootcast. But for this night, for this time and this episode, I am your host, PHS, and I'm going to be signing off. Hey, remember, y'all, keep it real, keep it shoot. Have a good night.